Hey there, beautiful souls. I'm Colynn Hlokoff.
And I'm Meridee Hlokoff.
And welcome to Spiritual Sisters with Sass, the podcast where two sisters with a passion for spirituality and a touch of sass come together to explore the exciting world of self-improvement.
That's right, Colynn. We embarked on this incredible journey together, diving into different self-improvement techniques, yoga practices, and a whole array of life experiences.
Yeah, and through it all, we've managed to create lives that are abundant, happy, and constantly evolving. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it, Meridee?
You bet, sis. We've got two very different perspectives on life, but that's what makes this podcast so special. I'm all about diving in head first into life's adventures and embracing every challenge with a bit of sass. While Colynn here, she's got her own unique approach.
Yep, that's me. And I'm all about the yoga, mindfulness, and finding my zen. And together we make the perfect balance.
So whether you're looking for some wisdom, a few laughs, or just some heartfelt stories, you're in the right place. We're here to share our personal experiences and insights with you, all while exploring the wild and diverse world of self-improvement.
So grab your headphones and get ready for a fantastic journey with us. Spiritual Sisters with Sass is here to uplift, inspire, and keep it real.
Thanks for tuning in, lovely listeners. Let's dive in.
Spirit and sass. Here we go.
There we go.
All right, welcome everyone. Back again for another episode of Spiritual Sisters with Sass. And this week we have Levi joining us, and we're really looking at talking about like filling a void. And he's gonna fill you in even deeper on what we're specifically looking on. But as we are recording this, I love it because it fits so well with our pre-talk. Was talking about what we just talked in our last episode, as well as having Levi here, who is also sober. Yes. So I love this because I think that we can get really attached to the idea of having to drink, and that's a part of the way that we bond. And yet I would say that if you come here and hang out with us at all, you're gonna fucking hang out with sober people who still really kick ass. So thanks for being here, Levi. And why don't you introduce to us a little bit more about why you're here and what you want to share?
My name is Levi, and I'm a grateful recovering addict. I have 18 months clean yesterday.
Yeah.
Nailed it. Yeah, so when it comes down to me, I grew up very middle class, and I had three older brothers, and the partying scene became kind of casual. My parents drank, but we have a long history of alcoholism in our family and just overall addiction. My mom said it was the gift that keeps on giving. So getting into partying early on, going to high school parties was my thing. The first party that I did a hard drug was the same party I lost my virginity, and I thought it was the man. I don't know if I fucked like a rock star or what the problem or what it was. I don't know. I got a good review after, so cool. But no, it just kind of became very nostalgic, and it stayed with me for a long time. And it kind of developed into this thing of like, there was a void that I didn't know how to fill. And it took a while of me constantly filling it with drugs. I was in the crime scene for a long time, and drug dealing was a very big part of my life. And I think I went through just enough bullshit to understand how not to live.
Yes.
There was no curiosity left. I murdered my cat a million times. With curiosity, with drug culture, drugs, period, there's not too much I haven't done to get a full experience of on any spectrum when it comes to narcotics. And at the end of the day, the two places I found all my answers, well, three places kind of, was jail. For one, that was the prime example.
Yeah.
Being an extreme person in an extreme lifestyle, you need an extreme example to course correct. And Narcotics Anonymous and church. I'm a devout Christian. The fact that I used to believe in coincidence. Oh, that's a funny coincidence. And then you become a victim of coincidence or happenstance or whatever you want to call it. And at the end of the day, if you can look at everything that has a purpose through a higher power of your understanding, things start to make sense. Tests that come up become very clear and why they're there. And the fact that you're in tune to the frequencies of recovery with a higher power, doing the right things at the right time with the right people, all of a sudden stuff just starts to click. And in jail, I had tons of time to journal because COVID hit. So they thinned the whole herd out. It was like 36 guys on a 20 cell unit, and it was an absolute gong show. One guy's getting stabbed, another dude's playing chess, another dude's working out, another dude's laughing. You don't know. It's all basically inside of a big drum and it's a bunch of noise. COVID hits. Everyone gets, or anyone with misdemeanors or nonviolent offenses gets bail. So there's like 12 guys on a unit now. What a coincidence, or is it? Because now I have all this time to divulge into what, why, and where. And then once I understood that, I was a habitual people pleaser in a drug dealing culture. And that gave back. And I seen through drug dealing all the hustles, the verbal hustles that everyone try to get so they can get their fix. People use need and want all the time. And I try not to say try, I'm gonna do my best. I try not to say I need that. Maybe I just really want that. If you say, oh, I want change, but I need drugs, if you just switch those two words and say it to yourself enough, you're like, I need change, but I just really want the drugs. Being an addict, we're powerless over being an addict. We're not powerless over drugs. Drugs are a symptom of being addicted. So when it comes back to voids, spiritual voids, I see my boss as a prime example. He is an amazing father, an amazing boss. He's like real life Ned Flanders minus the church. Really high pitched voice. I can't get a ho diddly or hey neighborino out of him, but he literally looks like that. But his family is his higher power. He understands that there's something else out there, but he's never had to go searching for it because he's content with being an amazing dad to 4 kids, being an amazing husband, and being an amazing boss. He gives people chances over and over again. So he understands that there's something else out there, but he hasn't needed to go there because he has no addictions. He has no nothing that he's filling a void with because his family fills the void, and that is his higher power. So when I realized that I was trying to fill something that I didn't know how to go out and find the actual thing that I needed, because people run through the motions and it comes back to just letting go of whatever control you think you have, little things that you go through in life. If you let go of that, especially in addiction, because you think like, oh, I can do this by myself. No, you can't. Your self-will sucks so much, it's embarrassing. So that's why you have to relinquish it to a higher power. And what you get back is exactly who you want it to be. A lot of people, I used to be like, Christians are weird. They want the best for me. They're always smiling and shit. It makes me feel very funny. And when too much good stuff would go on, I'd have to be like, oh, well, I need to go fuck something up to make a snitch. I mean, and I felt like I was always playing the Marvel balance game. But relinquishing yourself to a higher power, it it's a bizarre feeling once you catch the drift. Like once you're in recovery, I haven't my mom passed away last July. We're coming up on a year anniversary of that. I didn't have a pull towards drugs at all. And that's because right where I was when that happened was X amount of trauma, but I had X amount of strength. God gives you free will to go up and like prosper from it in a really weird way, or you go down. You have the choice. That day, I had a choice, but I was also the first person that the ambulance contacted, and I have 2 older brothers in my mom's bloodline. So is that a coincidence, or did that have a purpose? Because I spent the most amount of time with my mom. I showed her a lot of things that she should never have seen, and she held on to some of those things. And I thought jail and separation and codependency between me and my mom was the best thing, but I was the gatekeeper for her house. And once I left, because people are like, I would tell them, beat it or fuck off, or I'd be like, yo, you're not coming there. And people knew, like, oh, I wouldn't dare do that because Levi's there, kind of thing, right? But then my mom, her escape was always her number one thing was helping other people. And it ended up killing her because she neglected herself for so long. and she gave anything that she had, which was very little, towards other people. She tried to recover for other people, and they'd run through the motions for 3 months, and then they would just go right back, because once they said they go back to the thing that fulfills them temporarily, but they're not willing to let go and have that pinhole of curiosity, open-mindedness, willingness, and I can't remember the other one, but that's what we refer to in NA. And just open your mind and be curious a little bit to something else, but you have to go there. You have to go to those places. Like, if you knew me before, you would be like, no fucking way this guy's gonna be a Christian. No fucking way this guy's gonna get clean. Because like, I was a good time. You know what I mean? Like, I can say that confidently because literally my one-liner for living up in Alberta was like, Levi is a notorious good time. Right. And eventually you go to parties, you go to social outings, and you use the drugs to enhance those outings. But then you stop going to the outings and you start doing drugs by yourself in a living room or somewhere, or with a bunch of addicts. So at that point, you stop doing the drugs and the drugs start doing you, and you get nothing from it, and it just kills you. Get two things: an escape and a buzz.
Yep.
It's no longer a fun time. It's ugly, it's dark, and like for me, I just finally stopped hovering above rock bottom, hit fuck it mode, started doing harsher drugs, and started doing collections and other stuff, and one went bad. And honestly, when I got arrested, I had a feeling that was when the Holy Spirit finally came into life. I didn't know what it was then, but I felt a great feeling of weightlessness getting arrested and going like there was tanks, dog teams, snipers. It was a whole task force. I was like, Jesus Christ. But I felt reassured in a weird way where I'm like, yes, like something's going to change. I don't know what it is, but like now I realize that that was the turning point. And I started realizing that like, okay, something will change here. And I was in jail and incarcerated just long enough to catch a good clue on what I should be doing. I didn't make a plan, because if you make one plan and that one plan falls through, you're like, fuck it, then you go right back. You make multiple plans. I was prepared to go dishwash part-time at 3 places just to make rent. I had that set in my mind before I went out, but also deciphering the knowledge about like why I was doing what I was doing was the hugest step. And then when I get tests all the time, people reach out to me that I've done time with. I literally just I paid for one of my buddies' bus tickets for him to go to a recovery center. He didn't get on the bus. I made boundaries extremely clear. This is it. If you do not get on that fucking bus, we are done. And I called him and he should have been on the bus. And I was like, dude, did you get on the bus? He's like, no, I didn't. I said, we're done. And hung up. And he tried to call me. He left voicemails. I had to block him on everything because that was it. And that's a clear boundary of learning how to say no. From a habitual people pleaser in a terrible environment, that was these tests that God was giving me so that I can make the right decision and say, no, this is it. No, this is where I'm at. And no, this is where I'm able to do so. You know what I mean? And like I said, I'm not going out trying to save the world, but every once in a while, someone comes across my path that I am just meeting, like even
For a reason.
meeting you, same thing. Our conversation, we were basically in our own little worlds talking about recovery. That's a beautiful thing, because that people go to like NA, and the people that aren't full tilt into the program, they oh, they're always saying the same thing. I was like, yeah, but repetitiveness can also be connected to consistency.
Mhm.
Are you at the meeting? Maybe they say a lot of the same, but there's always a variation where they finally, like, something comes up in their life, and then they have something very specific and vulnerable and different. Sometimes you go to a meeting, it's like 3 months of like kind of feeling like, oh, but then all of a sudden someone comes in and just shares this banger of a vulnerable share. And
Mhm.
it just like resonant. Man, I've cried so many times at meetings just because people are opening up. And that's a serious thing. Opening up in a group of strangers that you know are equally or worse fucked up than you are is a very comfortable feeling. You feel like committing suicide? Dude, this guy just laughed at me and said, I'll come get you. You know what I mean? So, okay, he's fucked up. Perfect. This is who I need to be around. But these are all these void things, spiritually, mental, and physically, that you need to be willing to go to these places. It's not going to hurt. Just open your mind a pinhole. You're in a pitch dark room. You poke a hole in the wall, see that pinhole, and walk towards it a little bit. Watch what happens. That snowballs and it turns into a massive entity in your life.
And even if it does hurt, it's a temporary hurt to such a great ending or such a great start.
But at least when I feel emotions, I don't know, you guys probably identify with this too. When you're clean, sober, connected, tuned in, when you feel emotions, it's genuine. And it's okay to, I was devastated when my mom died, but I was happy to feel those emotions like I did without trying to mask them. Because the more you compress and escape, the higher you want to get is the farther you want to get from reality. But when you come back down, all of that has lasagnaed, layered up, and it's all compiled there. I call it the Hiroshima karma bomb. When I was a young man, I used to have these little lies that I'm thinking I'm getting away with, and some big defining fucking thing would go down. And like, okay, I just broke even, right? It was like, shit, I didn't get away with anything because that made up for it because I'm an idiot. You know what I mean? Being honest and open-minded and willing to go to these places and feeling emotions in life on life's terms. Man, I don't dwell in emotions. I go through the motions and I use the tools from recovery. I have a sponsor. I have people I reach out to help me process. So I'm not sitting and grieving. I'm not sitting. If you know, when you're happy, it's an opportunity to try and stay happy. If you're fucked up, it's an opportunity to try to get back to happy. If you're in the middle zone and you're in cruise control, it's an opportunity to get out of that ditch and be happy. Everything is opportunistic. Every single piece of life is an opportunity to go back to a place. You need to know the spectrum to know where happy is and where you're content. And when you fall out of that, that's a test and a beautiful opportunity to go through a test that you need to learn because there's no universal tool for jack shit. You can take little pieces as you go along. But if you think you know something, your brain officially shuts off from potentially learning anything else.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And the
I had
feeling,
a-
sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
I had a client today, and I always say, hey, like 15-minute warning, right? Like, hey, I'm so excited to chat with you today. Here's our link. See you in 15 minutes.
Come on. There we go.
Oh,
Okay.
you glitched
There we
out
go.
there.
So I had a client today. I always give like a 15-minute, like, hey, see you in 15 minutes. So excited to chat. Here's the link. And so we get on our call this morning, and he says to me, you're always so excited for these meetings. And I'm not. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, say more. What does that mean? And he said, well, it's because we're like just bringing up all this stuff. And so I thought it was a really beautiful like segue into the reality. I said, I think of us like garbage cans full of puke. And these sessions, I'm really shitting the bed right now. These sessions are like you puking, allowing more of the shit that's inside to get out. It's not about stirring it up. I'm not like opening it up and then like poking it with a stick. It's about like actually dumping the garbage can out so we can see that part of you that's been fucking burdened by, I mean, he himself is sober as well. So we can use a lot of the same languaging that a lot of addicts will like know. And that's it. It's like the shit that's down there, because essentially we're still addicts. Like essentially, sure, you may be clean, you might not be drinking, but you're maybe processing too much sugar. You are maybe running until your feet break. You might be in the gym, like pumping iron until you're massive and huge. But the reality is that we're still behaving in ways that are addicts because we're still trying to fucking fill something that I actually think is like releasing. Like you said, letting go.
Yeah.
Being in flow.
But there's two things, two entities, people, only you and your higher power truly know where you're at.
Yeah.
I don't need to convince anybody in this world of anything of what I know and my higher power knows. So when you release that, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to like talk about that. may not need to talk about it, but clearly if you're not willing to talk about it for a quick sec, you're still holding on to some shit that's probably fucking anchoring you down and preventing you from moving forward. So releasing that, like you said, if you're gonna vomit all over the floor metaphorically, you're allowed to look at it and pick through it a little bit, but don't try and pick it up and take it with you again. You've puked it. You want to eat your own puke out of a garbage can? No, nobody does. But you have to be able to like me journaling for 2.5 years, man. And then reading back, like it's a stack like this of these things filled. It's mostly past stuff. It's potential future. I blur my future a little bit because if I think about what I can do too much, I get overwhelmed and I feel then all of a sudden I could just convince myself that I can't do it. It's the same of when you bring your past up and you spew that puke out, that emotional shit that you're hanging on to in the pit of your fucking stomach. When you let it out, it's nerve-wracking. And when you start to let go of stuff, you try to grab a hold of other shit.
Yeah.
Chain smoke cigarettes, like you said, Jim, all those examples that you just gave, we all go through that. But that's something like even now, when I first got out, I vaped. Holy, wake up at night. I would wake up 4 or 5 times a night, hotbox my room with vape smoke, go back to bed. But now I realized I was like, man, Kate, you've held on to that for long enough. I haven't touched my vape. And it's funny because it still sits on my center console, but it's covered in dust. And I don't even look at it. It's not there to like, I don't get triggered by it. It's literally just like an entity in my center console and it just like does nothing. But I gave that up because I realized that I was holding on to that and I like chain vaped like nonstop. And that's a vice. And now I went to those Zin pouches, but then I quit that too. And now I don't even hang on. I gave the rest of what I had away because I realized that like if you feel like, oh man, I just need to go smoke that joint. Oh man, I need to just have a cigarette. You want to have a cigarette, but you don't need to have the fucking cigarette. So this is like the challenges that come out, especially like the first couple forward, you're gonna fall on your face again, right? Because like I said, there's no universal tool for anything. I don't sit around and wait for war, but I will not be caught off guard when one comes. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Right?
What is your higher power? Like, is God to you like a dude?
He's an omniscient being. He is formless but has shape. He is everything and nothing. He's no sense of time, but it's God through Christ. Christ is the example for me. So when I was like, so I got jumped in prison. So a little detailed story. So I got charged with robbery with a firearm because I did a home invasion type collection. The weirdest thing, I got put in the same cell on the same unit as my co-accused. We got arrested the same day. That never happens. We were 3 months roommates, and I think God, like once again, this wasn't coincidence. I needed to be near him to see what he is really like, because addicts like to put up the facade, the street resume, hard AF type of stuff. But then when they go home, they smoke a half ounce of crack. You know what I mean? Without anybody seeing it. It's like, yeah, hard as fuck, pun intended. You just smoked a half ounce of crack, and then you're like, oh yeah, like junkie this, junkie that. You're lower than me, whatever. Drug dealers to me now, it's like they convince you that you're the greatest earner, you're a warrior, you're all this, but really, I'm just your biggest, dumbest, most clever slave with a little bit of personality. So that's what people liked with me, especially when I worked the phone. But you're just a slave. And, like everyone has their vices in that world as well. But being in a room with that guy for 3 months, I realized what a POS he was. When you say the word goof in prison, it is an immediate fight. He is a goof, bad goof. And we got a no contact. So I went up to another unit, but I tried to get bail within 90 days. I went all the way to Salmon Arm in my civilian clothes. Granted, this was me trying to get out. I was going to go work at a shitty job piling lumber for 16 bucks an hour and go back to my mom's place. And I made a statement on myself. I full tilt ratted myself out. I said those other two guys' names, but I got a year longer than both of them. They both got plea deals. I did not. I ended up getting charged with 7 years, but because The court system was so backed up. My date to set a date was like a year and a half later. So all this stuff is not coincidence. This is chronological events that were meant to open a certain door for me to realize certain things. One, that guy's a piece of shit. Two, I'm a piece of shit. Three, I went all the way there to think I was getting bail. They threw my statement in my face. I came back with my tail between my legs, and my co-accused was like, "Bro, what's up? I thought you were getting bail. I got to talk to you." And I was like, "Dude, I made a statement. I said your name. I refuse to testify, and I get no plea deals. And the only person that they can use that, because I'm not a material witness, I'm an active participant. I literally just ratted myself up." And because I was the one that brought the person, said yes, orchestrated the whole thing, and admitted it, that's why I got more time. But he's like, "Oh, thanks for telling me, bro. It's all good. We'll deal with it. It's whatever." Right? I was like, "Okay." So we go to court, and we get no contact orders. So I get moved up to the other unit. And as soon as I landed there, I told them right away, I didn't even have my bedroll unrolled yet. And I'm like, "I made a statement. If you guys want to read my paperwork, I know how it works in here. And I just don't want you guys to find something later. And then, it's just worse for me." Right? Every once went by. The back table guys, like the heavies on a fish, I sucked a metaphorical dick just to be like one of their pets. They and had a bit of a deeper mindset than most in there, and they opened up. They're crying about like their daughters hate them, their wives are leaving them, they don't know what to do with their life. They've been doing this for so long, like, you know what I mean, opened right up. And 8 months went by, and then all of a sudden I'm eating a piece of cake looking out the window, and I get jumped by two guys. And I take my lumps, and I'm like, "Holy, okay." And once the adrenaline wore down, I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go back to the unit." I told them the truth. I knew this was what would happen. Maybe I just took my lumps and I'm good. But against their own jail rules, I went and got 2 stitches in my head and a stitch in my lip from the hospital. I came back after last lockup, and I slept. But the two back table guys put letters under their door to give to the guards, and they took me out 10 minutes early before first unlock, and they're like, "We need to talk to you." I'm like, "Okay." I'm assuming it's about yesterday. I got my head kicked in, whatever. And I was like, I took my lumps, that's fine. And he's like, "No, we can't tell you who did it, but they put some kites under their doors and basically said that, like, they had to show me the evidence of it, but they showed me the one, and I knew whose writing it was, and it said, this wasn't our call. It came from the other unit. Levi's a good guy. We don't want to see him get hurt anymore. He is not safe here." And I'm like, "Holy shit." But then, like, they're like, "You have about 3 minutes to decide, and you have two options. You go back to the unit and gladiator it out and see what happens, or you check off and go to protective custody." So I had about 60 seconds to think about it, but then I realized they had enough respect to go against their own rules, because if I come back to the unit, I have to continually getting banged out until I check off. So I'm like, "Okay, okay." And then I checked off. I slept for like 2 weeks basically. And I did a ton of Suboxone. I was super upset. But this is where, like, I realized my cup is filled with bullshit. And this is what I get for being honest. I spent almost a year on that unit, and I told you guys a truth that was hard for me to tell. And you guys still did that and wouldn't let me come back to the unit that I'm used to being on. Like, I mean, I don't want special conditions or special, treatment. I knew what was going to happen eventually, and I didn't know exactly when, but then it ended up happening. And it was that was my definable rock bottom, where I realized, holy shit, this is what I get for telling the truth. Really? And then this is when I realized I was looking at my cup, and it was filled with bullshit, and I was just getting nothing out of life. I'm like, I fucking suck. And I've just been trying to escape normalcy and responsibility on a normal plane in a physical world by trying to hustle my way through life. And it's never if, it's when. If a hit's gonna come, it's when it's gonna come. And you can't prepare. I know of one person out of my entire drug dealing career that has been doing it for 30 plus years, has never been arrested, and it's like a mom and pop thing. He lives the lake life, has a boat, has a house, has an RV, has vehicles, and he's never been to jail because he never got violent. But literally, that's a one out of a sea of people. And the higher up you go, if you're moving bricks, man, your problems or potential problems are like through the roof. And that's a perpetual stress-filled heart attack. When you get used, it's like your heart beats jack, but your hands are steady. Like I'm pulled over, there's 250K in the car, and I'm like talking totally normal, and my heartbeat is just humming. And then he's like, oh, okay, have a nice night. I'm like, oh God. You know what I mean? I'm like, just breathe, man, it's fine. But no, you know what I mean, telling the truth and that being my definable rock bottom, that's when another coincidence happened. The chaplain came and talked to me. I'd never gone to church ever. He's like, I know you've never been to church in the year plus you've been here. He's like, but I have a couple hours today if you'd like to talk. We can have a coffee and discuss what happened. He's like, I know what happened. I still go to church with that guy every Sunday. And I started doing Bible studies, and I realized that that cup filled with bullshit, one, I need to empty it, and I need to let go of the bullshit and any sense of control or any sort of like loyalty I have to streets that just destroy you. Like, loyalty to what? A system that just puts you in more danger the more successful you get. Like, none of this makes any fucking sense. And the back table mentality is just the same, where it's like, yo, if you go bang this dude out that I have beef with, we'll move you up a table and give you some canteen. But you're promoting handling your own beef. You need to handle your own shit. But I'll give you $5 in canteen. You'll do 5 days in SAG. And yeah, we'll move you up a table. Because there's like a table system where it's like table 4 and 5 is like the street urchins and like, just people that are just getting misdemeanor stuff. Table 3 is kind of in the middle. Table 2, you are the assassins for table 1, where it's like you do their bidding, but for some reason the table gives you status. What do? You go up to a job like, dude, I sat table 2. Can I have this job, please? Like, what? You know what I mean? And it just all started to like really not make any sense to me. So those Bible studies helped me fill like the white picket fence and like the stuff that you can learn from scriptures or even through the NA literature or AA literature. A lot of people that don't have that like curiosity to go into that like universal unknown of higher powers, they use the program as their higher power.
Yeah.
And I always say, if you can't figure that out and you don't have that, the old timers that have like 30 years clean, they're like, my higher power is the program, because the spiritual principles, the concepts, sponsoring, service work, working the steps, all of that combined is like a version of a Bible. And you can live your life on life's terms with what is taught from there and the people in the rooms and using those resources. It's very important to be able to reach out. You are not alone ever, but you can make yourself feel alone. Alone and loneliness are totally different things. Loneliness has an emotional impact. Alone is just like a physical standpoint where it's like, I am alone because I'm not near anyone, but I'm lonely. That there's an emotional heaviness to being having loneliness. And the church thing and just getting outside of myself. So I go to my NA meeting once a week and I go to church once a week, but I also do service work. Like I talk at That's why I'm so grateful to be on this podcast. Because like when I met her, we called it healthy conversation, but really we're like arguing with each other. And it gets like, you know what I mean? But it's a fire though. I looked at it as like, yo, this is a fire-filled conversation because you have experience in your perpetual movement towards bettering yourself in every aspect of life is something that I can't even put on a scale of how much I respect. Because now that I'm in this, my life is exactly where it's supposed to be. Like I said, I moved in with my girlfriend, but I basically spent the last 2 months at her house, and I maybe was at home twice. But the landlord texted her. We had been talking about it for a month. I kind of joked about it for a bit, but she texted her and said, hey, if your boyfriend wants to move in, that's totally fine. He's been there all the time anyways, so we'll just add $100 on your rent and rewrite the rental agreement with him on it. I'm like, okay, that's not a coincidence. And like now I'm like living with a girlfriend that like I love. And like I can say that there's like a couple different stages of love for me where it's like I don't hate you. So like I like you, then I'm like in like with you, and then I say some random other L word between in like with you and love, or I'm like, fuck, I am super in lunch with you or something. And then it's like turns into like I love you. I actually like love you. But then there's a version above that. I am so fucking in love with you. I'm in love with you. But then because love is the soul's recognition of a counterpart in another. And when it happens, it happens. When you know, you know. I'm not planning a wedding, but I'm letting the process naturally and organically and genuinely work its way. So I tell my girlfriend, it goes, you're tied, you're tied for first with two other things: my faith, my recovery, and you. I was like, they're all first, but I set them in a certain order. So if my recovery goes down the shitter because I'm too involved with like the relationship, it's gonna fall apart. So that's why I have to keep my faith. I have to keep my recovery so that I can be the right person and a good man in the relationship. Honesty, open-mindedness, and communication between two people in a relationship is massive, massive. And I couldn't be more grateful for how this systematically has been breaking down in my recovery since I got out of jail. The amount of stuff that I had my first year out, man, I've had more good stuff. Granted, my mom passed away, but I've had more good stuff happen in that year than in my entire life. And it wasn't, there's a lot of deep-seated like prerequisite programming as a young man where I always wanted to avoid responsibility, and that manifested in an ugly fashion to the point where I want to avoid any sort like now I'm just like in construction and I'm going to be subcontracting working for myself. And I was tuning into the podcast before this, being working for yourself is a totally different realm because I feel like you guys mentioned the 9 to 5 thing. Granted, sometimes you're a business owner, you're like, yeah, time's irrelevant. I work 18-hour days sometimes, but that eventually gets to a point where it kind of takes care of itself, and then you're past the point of getting something going, and then it's doing its thing. So subcontracting for me, I can work by myself, for myself, have my own business, have my own health insurance. And to exist on paper to me is a big deal because like I started at $20 an hour under the table. But my boss is like feeling me out because he's had so many people come in and out of his business. It's ridiculous. But $20 under the table, did that for a couple weeks. I said, okay, I need to exist. I need to be, and I proved myself. And every single day, my God, every day I'm like, holy fuck, like, am I gonna make it? And I was like, just start with like getting off the edge of your bed for one. Try not to think about it. It's the cliff jumping thing. You see somebody that's jumped off it, don't think about it too much. Just start going. Just go, just jump.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Get up, go make breakfast, get your shit ready for the day, throw your boots on, and just try not to overthink because these little things, I call it the 10%, 100% theory. This is something that I came up with where it's like, say you're in a relationship and 90% of it's dog shit, but you take the 10% that's good and you isolate that and you turn it into 100% somehow. So it's like, oh, it's like, yeah, it's nothing but bullshit and drama. But then it's like, oh, but like, he did do the dishes that one time. He gives good hugs. You know what I mean? He like just like little stuff where it's like 10% turns into 100% when you're just like you're trying to keep something
Focus on it.
yeah, and then you just turn it into an emphasis on that.
Yes.
And that's not the way it's supposed to be. Man, yeah. Recovery is a trip, man.
It is.
It's such a
And
trip.
here's the difference that I'm sure even Lynn, you've seen in Levi since September. Like the growth that I've seen in who you are, in how you show up in this world is so completely different because even coming out of your recovery, there was, and I hope you don't take offense to this because I loved you regardless, but there was a bit of like a playboy side to him of like just seeking out and seeing women as like this thing that's going to help me keep perpetuating. And now it's like, he's the man and he knows what he wants. And now he's found this girl that he loves and
I did not find, it was given.
brought. to him.
And I was not, as soon as I quit looking or trying to force, there's so many people out there that try and like strangle the universe to their own will, where and then it never works, and then you get into the settling. You settle for something.
Yeah.
And you're like, shit. Best reference I actually heard from the guy I go to church with. First time I ever heard him say an F-bomb. He never swears, period, ever. I was talking about in one of these like little fling relationships that I was in. I got a little bit upset, obviously, but I was actually the most emotionally mature I've ever been in that circumstance, which is a new thing. But I was like proud of myself and how I went through that. But he said this. He's like, Levi, how long do you think Adam was in the garden before Eve was given to him? And then he just like kind of comes in. He's like, work your fucking garden. And he's just like, and watch what comes. And when I quit, people are so lost in the chase that something can pass right by them because they're so fixated on finding this thing. I need to find this thing. Why don't you do right for yourself and watch what the fuck comes at you?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, I am content. I'm in love with somebody. I'm doing well at work. I like, you know what I mean? I'm taking care of myself. Holy shit. You gotta, it comes back to like letting go to what you feel you need and just take care of yourself.
Let it go. Just say it.
This is like so on point, actually, of like my witnessing of Meridee, actually, of like, I mean, we need to do a podcast on Mexico City just in fucking general, but like,
You gave me a rundown on that. Yeah.
the idea of like wanting to find this partner and then holding on to it in the moment of like it, like you said, like strangling the universe. I see it like coming back to the whole point of the podcast is like trying to fill this void that's empty of a person, and yet underneath it all is a fucking person that has been around for many, many years. And so it's like it's filling the void with things that aren't here, yet here it is the whole time. And now Meridee's exploring with someone who has been around for a long time. On top of that, it's like trying to fill this empty void once I've met my needs, my basic needs.
As well as becoming the person that I needed to become to be at the level, like, and when I say this, I'm not saying I wasn't ever good enough, but in so many ways, I needed to be better in order to even be able to explore what I'm exploring right now, because I wasn't who I needed to be. I wasn't the person. I wrote out a list of everything I wanted, and I wasn't the person on that list. I have become the person on that list. It's on my window, and I've become the person. And only since I've become the person am I now worthy of what I'm now heading into, which is basically the thing that I've always asked for.
Which is essentially the thing we continue to look for. It's like I talk about yoga all the time, and the kleshas, and the idea of like the very first reason that we suffer is because we have become ignorant to who we really are, and who are we. And this may like counter some of your beliefs, Levi, but in non-dualistic yoga, the reality is that we are God, like we are a part of God, and we've forgotten it. So we identify as pieces of shit, and we try to fill this void with a bunch of bullshit that's money and cars and private jets and like all this crap. But the reality is we are God, and we are who we're looking for, period.
We were made in his image. So you're not going against anything that I believe in, not by any means necessary. But it comes down to we're made in an image of something greater, but we also have free will to do what we want to do. Hence why the reference.
I don't know if you've heard this or not. Lynn tells this great story about, can you tell the great story about like the pieces of us, breaking it into a.
There's this idea or this story that, you know, God he's sick of it. People are relentless and they won't leave him alone. So he's like, he has a meeting of all the great sages in the world, and he says, I need to get away from them. They're relentless. What can I do? And one of the sages says, well, go to the highest mountain at the tops of the earth. And so he says, no, they'll find me there. And, you know, we've climbed Everest many times. And then another sage says, oh, just go to the bottom of the ocean. They'll never find you there. And, we've explored Mariana's Trench now. So we've been to the deepest depths. And there's one sage and he says, I know, come here. And he whispers, just break yourself into 8 billion pieces and put a little piece of you in each human. They'll never find you there.
And now we struggle to find God because he's within us.
Yeah. I gave myself up to a higher power, and what I got back was exactly.
Ugh, you guys got goosebumps.
Oh, I can see it.
Ugh. But
Yes.
this is a hard fucking mic drop because all of this came together so beautifully in the end. So thank you, Levi, for joining us and for sharing your
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
And you guys, we will see you guys next week as per usual, and we'll be sharing all more vulnerabilities and probably rolling from this into something that is going to continue with the same thing of becoming the best version of yourself, essentially.
Yes.
And having these hard conversations that lead to so much more.
Absolutely.
So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Levi.
Thank you for having me.
Levi. I'm sure we'll have you on again.
Yeah.
I'm on standby.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Thank you for joining us on this spirited journey today.
We hope you enjoyed diving into the world of self-improvement with us. Two sisters who found their own unique paths.
Remember, life is a tapestry of experiences, and it's how we embrace them that makes all the difference.
So whether you're on your yoga mat, exploring mindfulness, or simply navigating life's twists and turns, always keep that spirit and sass alive.
We are Colynn and Meridee Hlokoff, and we're here to remind you that happiness and abundance are within reach.
Stay connected with us on social media and keep those questions and stories coming. We love hearing from you.
Until next time, beautiful souls, keep doing the work, keep sharing your experiences, and keep living a life that's authentically you.
And never forget to add a little extra sass to your day.
Spirit and sass, always.